Have you ever noticed how loud the world has become? Everywhere you turn, someone is shouting for attention. The boldest voice claims victory. The most dramatic statement seems to win the room. And the one who rushes to speak first is often mistaken for the one who's ahead. But life has taught me something different, something that took years, storms, and a few battles to truly understand. Real power doesn't need to make noise. Genuine strength can walk into a room without saying a word, and still shift the entire atmosphere. Silence, my friend, is not the weakness of the voiceless, it's the armor of the wise. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who they are and who they belong to. The one who's seen enough storms to know there's no need to scream back at the wind, they simply wait. Because they know who calms the seas. Think about Jesus for a moment, standing before Pilate, accused by men, mocked, insulted, spat upon. Yet he never argued. He didn't raise his voice to prove his innocence. He stayed silent, not because he lacked power, but because he had already won. His silence thundered louder than any defense. That silence was strength. There will be moments in your life when the most powerful thing you can do is nothing, not because you're out of words, not because you don't know the truth, but because the moment doesn't deserve your peace. You don't need to explain your calling to people who weren't in the room when God called you. You don't need to justify your path to those who were never meant to walk it with you. Silence is a response. It's the response of maturity. It's the sign you've grown past the need to clap back or prove yourself. It's easy to react. It takes discipline to stay still. It's easy to argue. It takes character to walk away and let God speak for you. When you're silent, you're not ignoring the storm. You're trusting it doesn't have the final word. You're not letting people walk over you. You're letting God lift you above the noise. Because when you speak at the wrong time, you can delay what God is trying to do through you. But when you remain silent in faith, you give Him full control. And trust me, God never loses control. You don't have to raise your voice to raise your value. You don't have to argue to be understood. Sometimes the loudest declaration you can make is to let your actions speak. Let your growth speak. Let your fruit speak. Some of you are exhausted, not because you're on the wrong path, but because you've been carrying conversations you were never meant to have. You've been wasting energy on battles that are beneath your purpose. Not every insult needs a reply. Not every opinion deserves an answer. Sometimes silence is the only way to keep your spirit pure while the world tries to throw dirt on your name. And here's the truth. God hears the whispers spoken against you behind closed doors. He sees the fake smiles hiding betrayal. And if you stay silent, if you refuse to lower yourself to their level, He will handle it. He will prepare a table for you, right there in the presence of your enemies. And you won't have to say a single word. Your silence will speak for you. There's a peace that comes when you finally realize you don't owe anyone an explanation for the blessings over your life. People may question how you got there, but they didn't see the tears you cried, the nights you prayed, or the battles you fought in secret. So why waste your breath trying to convince them? Let them wonder. Let them talk. While they gossip, you grow. While they slander, you soar. If you can master the discipline of silence, you will walk into rooms your enemies swore you'd never enter. You'll receive blessings the world said you didn't deserve. And when that happens, don't clap back. Don't throw shade. Don't say, "I told you so." Just smile and keep walking. Be silent, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Not because you're scared, but because you trust the one who fights for you. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know who speaks for you. Sometimes it's not about what you say, it's about what you surrender. God may call you into silence, not to punish you, but to prepare you, to quiet your mind so you can hear Him clearly. Because believe it or not, God often works the most when we speak the least. We live in a noisy world. Everyone's talking, posting, shouting to be seen and validated. But heaven doesn't respond to noise, it responds to faith. And real faith doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply whispers, "God, I trust you, even when I don't understand." Some blessings are delayed, not because you're unworthy, but because your spirit is too distracted to hear God's direction. You can't follow divine guidance if you're drowning in your own opinions. The greatest breakthroughs you're waiting for may be hiding behind a quiet heart, not a quiet life, but a heart at peace. So, when was the last time you sat in stillness, not scrolling, not speaking, just listening? And that's where we left off. learning that silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Now, let's take it one step deeper. Some of the most powerful moments in my walk with God didn't happen during the shouting, the singing, or the moments when the crowd was loudest. They happened in the stillness, that sacred hush where the noise of the world fades, and your soul leans in closer. It's in that space that God whispers the next step. It's in that quiet where He gently corrects the things your pride refused to hear when you were too busy defending yourself. It's in that silence where He begins to heal what the noise of life tried to hide. It's the moment your heart says, "Lord, I don't need to fight this my way. I'm done trying to fix what I can't control. I surrender it to you." And when you finally reach that point, God begins to move in ways you could never orchestrate on your own. He opens doors you didn't even knock on. He clears paths you never saw coming. He brings peace into situations where you once thought you'd drown in anxiety. But here's the truth: it starts with silence. It starts with trust. Some of you have been talking too much to people and not enough to God. You've been explaining yourself, defending yourself, venting your frustrations, trying to get others to understand your pain. But people can't heal what only God can restore. People can't lift what only God can carry. And the more you run to noise for comfort, the more you delay the answer that comes only in the quiet. There's a reason Jesus often withdrew from the crowds. He wasn't tired of healing. He wasn't avoiding people. He understood something we often forget. Silence with the Father refuels the soul, resets the mind, and realigns the mission. You can't keep pouring out if you're always surrounded by noise. Even the Savior needed stillness to stay strong. And I want to speak directly to the one listening right now who feels unheard. You've been praying, crying, asking, waiting, and still, heaven feels silent. You've wondered, why isn't God answering me? But maybe the silence isn't His absence, it's His alignment. Maybe God isn't ignoring you. Maybe He's inviting you to stop talking long enough to listen. If you lean in, you might realize He's been speaking all along, through closed doors, through delayed blessings, through moments when something had to fall apart so something better could fall into place. It takes spiritual maturity to understand that God's silence doesn't mean He's stopped working. Think about it. A seed buried in the soil makes no sound, yet it grows. A baby in the womb doesn't speak, yet it is being formed. A caterpillar in a cocoon is silent, yet transformation is taking place. So why do we assume that change must always be loud? God is not moved by our volume. He is moved by our surrender. You don't have to remind Him of the promises He's made. He hasn't forgotten, but He may be waiting for your stillness before He releases them. He may be waiting for your silence before He opens the next door. Because when you are still, your eyes open wider, your ears grow sharper, and your faith becomes deeper. And when that happens, you're not just ready to receive the blessing, you're ready to carry it. So stop trying to outtalk your fears. Stop trying to outshout your enemies. You don't need to post it, prove it, or explain it. Just be still. God is not deaf. He is not late. He's simply waiting for you to quiet down enough to hear Him say, "This is the way, walk in it." You don't truly realize how valuable your peace is until you start losing it. Until you find yourself drained, not from hard work, but from carrying conversations that go nowhere, from defending yourself against people who have already decided what they believe, from reacting to every comment, every look, every word thrown your way. That's when it hits you. Your peace is worth more than your point. And silence becomes your shield. There are things in life that simply aren't worth your voice, not because you don't care, not because you're weak, but because you've finally learned that maturity doesn't react, it responds. And often, it responds with silence. Every time you respond to something that doesn't serve your purpose, you pay a price. You spend your energy, your focus, your time, and some of us are spiritually bankrupt because we've been spending our attention on battles we were never called to fight. We've turned our peace into a stage for arguments, our hearts into targets for other people's frustrations. Hear me. You do not have to attend every argument you're invited to. Not every accusation demands a rebuttal. Not every situation needs your voice. Some things require your silence, because silence is a boundary. And boundaries protect what's sacred. What's sacred, my friend, is your purpose. What's sacred is your calling. What's sacred is your relationship with God. And when you respond to every offense, every whisper of gossip, Every post designed to provoke you. You are handing over the peace God gave you to people who neither earned it nor know how to protect it. That's not wisdom. That's self-sabotage. There comes a moment in your walk with God where you don't stay silent because of who they are. You stay silent because of who He is. Because you know the battle isn't yours. The burden isn't yours. And the outcome isn't yours to control. All you have to do is stand still. Hold your peace. And let the Lord fight for you. The Bible says, "In quietness and trust shall be your strength." That's not just poetic, it's profoundly practical. When you stop chasing noise, stop explaining yourself, stop reacting to every push and pull of the outside world, you discover something deep inside, a strength, a clarity, and a peace that doesn't come from your surroundings, it comes from your surrender. And I know, it's not easy. It's not easy to stay silent when you're misunderstood. It's not easy to hold your tongue when someone lies about you. It's not easy to walk away when you know you could prove your point. But listen, God isn't calling you to win their battle. And that's the point. God isn't calling you to win every argument, He's calling you to win the war within. He's not asking you to be right in the eyes of people. He's asking you to be righteous in His sight. That means you don't owe anyone an explanation for walking away from certain people. You don't need to justify why you're not answering every text, returning every call, or entertaining every conversation. You don't have to explain why you protect your peace. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply smile, say nothing, and keep walking. Because your silence is not weakness, it's growth. Your silence is your healing. Your silence is your strength. Let them talk, let them assume, let them misunderstand. After all, they talked about Jesus too. And still, He fulfilled His purpose. Still, He rose. Still, He changed the world. Not through endless arguments, but through obedience. Not through constant noise, but through His steady, unshakable presence. And if He could stand silent before His accusers, fully knowing who He was, then so can you. You don't have to defend yourself when heaven is already defending you. You don't have to react when your reaction could cost you your peace. Remember this. Just because they're loud doesn't mean they're right. And just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes, silence is the loudest declaration that your spirit belongs to God, not to the opinions of people. If you truly want to grow, if you want to walk in peace, then protect your energy, guard your mind, be careful, very careful, about what truly deserves your voice. Your voice is powerful, and what is powerful must also be protected. Be silent, and let peace become your greatest weapon. There's a reason God tells us to be still, not just to stop moving, but to quiet the noise inside our hearts and minds. Because silence isn't merely the absence of sound, it's the presence of trust. It's the quiet prayer that says, "Lord, I don't know what you're doing right now, but I believe you're doing something good." That kind of silence is where strength is born. Too often, we're busy talking, worrying, complaining, and trying to figure things out, forgetting that God already has the answer. We think more words will fix it. We think more planning, more stressing, more pushing will change the outcome. But faith doesn't grow in the middle of noise, it grows in stillness. It grows when you stop asking, "Why?" and start saying, "I trust you anyway." Real trust is revealed in the moments when you can't see the way forward. When the night feels long, the future uncertain, the prayers unanswered, and the path unclear, that's where faith steps in. And that's where silence becomes power. This isn't the silence of despair. It's the silence of confidence, the kind that says, "Even if I don't understand it now, I know who holds tomorrow." God doesn't always explain Himself. He doesn't always send you the details. But He does promise His presence. The truth is, you can't hear the whisper of the Holy Spirit when your mind is crowded with fear and your mouth is filled with complaints. But when you calm the storm inside, you realize He's been there all along. Some of you are in a season right now that simply doesn't make sense. You're trying to trust, but nothing's moving. No doors are opening. Nothing seems to be changing. And the temptation is there, to panic, to compromise, to force something to happen, to say something, to do anything, just to see movement. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Stand still. Trust, be silent, and let God be God. Think of the children of Israel standing at the edge of the Red Sea. The enemy was closing in behind them. The waters blocking their way ahead. No way forward, no way back. And what did God say? Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. He didn't tell them to build a boat, he didn't tell them to swim, he told them to be still. To trust, and in the moment they obeyed. The sea split wide open. That's the God we serve. The one who makes a way where there is no way. But notice, he doesn't always move when we're speaking. Often, he moves when we stop speaking. When we stop panicking. When we stop trying to be in control. When we finally say, God, I surrender this completely to you. You can't keep holding the pen and expect God to write your story at the same time. At some point, you have to lay it down. You have to say, God, even if I can't see it, I'll trust you, even if I don't hear you. I know you're near, even if I don't feel anything changing. I believe you're working behind the scenes. That kind of trust, quiet, deep, unwavering, is what moves heaven. It's easy to trust God when everything is going right. It's easy to have faith when the blessings are flowing and the doors are opening. But what about when the door stays shut? What about when the answer doesn't come? What about when all you hear is silence? That's when true trust is tested. That's when silence becomes your strength. Because trust doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it simply waits, quietly, humbly, without demanding an explanation, without insisting on a timeline. It waits because it knows God is too faithful to fail, too good to forget, and too wise to make a mistake. So don't let the silence scare you, don't let the delay make you doubt God hasn't left you. He hasn't forgotten you. He's building something in you. He's teaching you to walk by faith, not by sight. He's teaching you that you don't need every answer, you just need Him. And one day, when the silence breaks and the blessing arrives, you'll see, it was worth the wait. You'll look back and thank Him for every quiet moment. Because those were the moments He was preparing you for what's next. And just when you thought the waiting was over, the silence remained. But it wasn't the kind of silence that leaves you empty. No, this was the kind that holds you still. The kind that refuses to let you rush ahead before your heart is ready. He didn't answer too soon. He kept you there, in that quiet place, until your spirit could carry what your words were not yet strong enough to say. So, trust Him. Trust Him in the stillness. Trust Him when the pieces don't fit. When nothing makes sense. When every part of you wants to panic. Because sometimes the loudest faith is found in the quietest heart. Be still, and let your trust speak louder than anything your mouth could ever declare. There comes a moment in life when God begins to shift the people around you. And if you're not careful, you'll misread it. You'll think it's punishment, when really, it's preparation. You'll feel rejected, when in truth, you're being protected. In moments like that, silence becomes more than a posture, it becomes your survival. Not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you. Not everyone who cheers you in one season will walk beside you in the next. And sometimes, the hardest part of growing is outgrowing the people you never imagined living without. But hear me, you don't have to announce it, explain it, or defend it. Stay silent, and let God handle the separating. Some relationships are seasonal. Some friendships were only written for a chapter, not the whole book. And when God turns the page, it's not your job to cling to characters who don't belong in the next scene. You don't need closure when you've found peace. You don't need revenge when you've been released. You don't have to chase those who walked away when God is calling you forward. But the flesh, the flesh wants answers, doesn't it? We want to know why they changed, why they left, why they lied, why they treated us that way. We want to speak up, confront the betrayal, expose the dishonor, defend our name. But friend, silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's trusting that what God will reveal in time will be far more powerful than anything you could say right now. You don't need to broadcast the pain they caused. You don't need to drag their name through the mud. God saw it all. Every whispered conversation behind your back. Every door they tried to shut. Every act of manipulation, gossip, and sabotage. And He has already said, "Vengeance is mine, not yours, not your mouth, not your emotions, His." When you hand Him the battle, silence becomes your weapon. A silence that speaks louder than any argument. A silence that confuses the enemy. A silence that says, "I know who I am. I know whose I am. I don't have to fight for a seat at the table. Because God prepares one for me, in the presence of my enemies. Walking in that kind of silence is walking in divine confidence. Not because you're flawless, but because you're protected. Sometimes, the ones who left had to leave so you could finally hear God's voice clearly. Sometimes, the betrayal had to happen so your heart could be purified. Sometimes, the silence was necessary because their noise was drowning out your discernment. And when God removes someone from your life, He doesn't ask for your permission, only your obedience. You won't always understand it in the moment. You won't always see the purpose in the pain. But one day, you'll look back and realize, He was saving you. Saving your time, saving your destiny, saving your soul. Some of those people weren't just distractions, they were delays. In mercy, He made space for your purpose to breathe. So don't try to reopen a door God has closed. Don't explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Don't hold on to those who have already let go. The more you defend yourself, the more drained you'll become. But when you choose silence, when you release the hurt, when you trust God with what's happening behind the scenes, He does something beautiful. He restores you, without your help. That's when true healing comes. Not when you win the argument. Not when you post the truth. Not even when they finally say sorry. Healing comes when you can sit in silence, and still feel God's presence. It comes when you can walk away without bitterness. When you can bless them in your prayers, even if they cursed you with their words. That kind of peace isn't man-made, it's God-given. Maybe that's where you are right now, trying to make sense of a sudden separation. Aching over people you love, tempted to speak up, to clear the air, to prove your innocence. But listen, there is more strength in your silence than in your defense. Because the God who sees in secret will reward you openly. And when He does, no lie, no rumor, no betrayal will be able to stop what He has planned for you. So be silent, and let God remove who He needs to remove, so He can make room for what He's about to do. There's something sacred about silence when it's rooted in surrender, not defeat. Not fear, but the kind that says, Lord, I've said all I can say. I've tried all I can try. Now, I'm letting go, and I'm letting you take over. That's when miracles happen, not when you fight harder, but when you finally lay your weapons down. Life will stretch you. It will test your patience. There will be moments when everything feels delayed, your dreams, your prayers, your healing, and in those moments, silence becomes the soil where patience and trust take root. Because sometimes, God's greatest work isn't found in the noise of progress, but in the quiet of waiting. You may be praying right now and feel like heaven is silent, no sign, no answer, no change. But just because you hear nothing, doesn't mean He's doing nothing. His silence is not absence, it's preparation. And so, as we saw earlier, the season of waiting isn't wasted time, it's where the deepest transformations begin. In the stillness, He shapes your character in the quiet. He tests the motives you rarely even speak out loud in the pauses and delays. He purifies the desires of your heart, refining them like gold in fire. Here's the truth. Waiting in silence does not mean doing nothing. Far from it, it's the hard, unseen work of trusting. It's showing up every single day with faith, even when there's no evidence on the horizon. It's choosing hope when doubt is screaming louder than your thoughts can keep up with. It's resting in the promise rather than wrestling with the process. Because once you've learned how to stand in silence during a delay, something inside you shifts. You begin to walk by faith, not by sight. You stop demanding instant results to validate your journey. You stop craving applause or recognition to prove your worth. You no longer need every step to make sense, because your confidence isn't anchored in the outcome. It's anchored in the one who holds the outcome. That kind of silence is anything but weak, it's powerful. It whispers, I don't have to rush what God is doing. I don't have to beg for what is already mine. I don't need to force open a door that isn't ready. If God promised it, I will stand on it, even if that means waiting quietly in the hallway for a while. And here's something few people realize, the hallway can be holy ground. That space between promise and fulfillment is where your roots dig deep. Where your pride is stripped away. Where your faith grows strong enough to weather any storm. Think about it. Some of the most anointed men and women didn't encounter God in moments of public victory. They found Him in the silence of delay. Joseph, in the prison. David, in the wilderness. Moses, in the desert. Even Jesus, in the stillness of the tomb. Every one of them endured seasons of silence. Every one of them faced divine delays. And yet, in each story, God was not late. He was right on time, because heaven doesn't move by your clock. It moves according to His purpose. We often assume that silence is a punishment. But sometimes, silence is God's mercy. Because if He gave you what you were asking for too soon, it might just crush you before you could carry it.